Today, I'm talking with Emily Pagone, a therapist and the founder of Authentic Growth Wellness Group, about something so many of us deal with but don't always recognize, that critical voice inside our heads. Emily's inner critic showed up early in her life, shaped by a nervous system that didn't quite fit into the traditional learning environments. It wasn't until she became a mother that she finally got the full picture, both for herself and her children. In this episode, she shares her story of unlearning, of healing, and of finding true self-compassion, and what that looks like in real time. If you've ever wondered how to shift that challenging internal dialogue, this conversation is one you won't want to miss. I'm your host, Katherine Jelinek, and this is the Expanders Podcast, presented by The Skinny Platform, the place for entrepreneurs with something to share and who want to be heard. Welcome, everyone. I am really excited today to get to introduce you again to a very radiant human, mother, licensed clinical professional counselor, and entrepreneur, Emily Pagone, who's the founder and executive director of Authentic Growth Wellness Group.
Yes, thanks
Welcome,
so much.
Emily. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Katherine.
Yeah. So I know your book is coming out soon, and I'm so excited about it. And I've told a lot of people about your story, but let's kind of give a little bit of insight into it to those who haven't heard yet. And it really begins with your younger years and the development of a very harsh inner critic.
Yeah. I will just dive in and share a little bit about that.
Yes,
So
please do.
it's, when I'm talking with other people, whether my clients or, other humans about, our parts that are so harsh on us, there's so many different kinds. And mine, I always identified early on was my inner critic voice. And it always, if I could pinpoint the age, is always just so early, I would say probably around, the school years, when kids get into school, like kindergarten. And so what have come to know about my own self is that just like many other people, humans and children, I was definitely born with a nervous system that likes to move. I have a lot of energy. We think about Sonic the Hedgehog, anything that moves with a lot of fast ideas and energy at all times. That is me. And, it's just the times, I was born into as well. That was still the, fixed mindset of education, and just how children were being taught. And that's just what was the approach for the time frame, And, but what we've learned about kiddos like myself and other ones is that when you have like the operating system that, I have, because you always have it, it is what it is. It's awesome. That, when we go into these educational environments, these inner critics just show up earlier. And so for me, the inner critic was always there, always trying to do well by me, but in a really sad voice, painful voice, to make sure I was doing all the things I was supposed to do, just like the other little kids. For me, as all kids do though, especially being wired like I am, we learn by doing and moving and being in nature. And then it just, I have these poignant moments where I zoom in and I have memories of, if we think about having circle time when we're little in classrooms, being in circle time or doing silent reading. And then the teacher tells you what's next. And then I always pick my head up and I remember, everyone was done, but I was still reading. Why was I still reading the same sentence so many times, not comprehending it? And so because of that, and being neurospicy, as I fondly say all the time, and I've learned about myself, is that the inner critic showed up really early because of having a different nervous system than the majority. Yeah.
Right.
So it was always there.
Yeah, at an early age.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so hard, especially at 5. So kindergarten. Yeah.
Right.
And you weren't technically diagnosed until your adulthood, but let's fast forward a little bit to just share with listeners what you found out in terms of the technical term for your operating system.
Yeah. So I was always like, suspicious of my own self and just aware of my shortcomings and struggles. And so I had some kind of idea. Definitely, anxiety is like the forefront of this nervous system. Um, you know, as it is typical with so many parents and children, I was formally diagnosed at the same time that my oldest was, because we've learned through the science that, if we have a neurospicy child, one of the parents has the same neurospiciness guaranteed, basically.
Yeah.
And so, definitely me over here. So I'm ADHD and dyslexic, and I have that in my family of origin. I always say lit up like a Christmas tree. You get to see all the, nature versus nurture. A lot of nature in there, inherited. And I think I'm, because of just how it is commonly done like this. I'm the first generation to really learn and embrace what this is. Um, and so it just was and it continues to be such an impactful lived experience to undo and relearn this inner critic voice in my head while I try to see what I can do for my own child to ensure his inner critic is not as ferocious as mine was at such an early age. So, yeah.
I heard someone say once that so many of us in this generation have a unique challenge. I don't know what the right word would be, task, because we are in so many ways reparenting ourselves with the new
Mhm.
information that is
Yeah.
available and parenting our children, and in some cases also reparent or parenting our parents.
Hmm.
Like the information we have now of being able to accept and appreciate and surrender into the uniqueness of our psyches or dispositions, the things that are patterned, and
Hmm.
then being able to give that to like ourselves and then the generations forward and backward, now that this is something
Hmm.
we can, I don't know, that we're more ready for as a culture, I guess.
And, we'll dive into this a bit more in a few moments, I'm sure. There's just something that came to my mind when you were saying that, which is um, the truth and the notion of, like, you're the ancestor that your ancestor, your lineage has been waiting for. So it's such a powerful thing to keep in mind, and is also the beauty and the pain
Yeah.
and
So
healing.
take us there. Like if there's whatever there is more to say there for you,
Yeah,
with the ancestors or anything else.
right. So there's so many people, burdens that we carry, right? Our invisible
Mhm.
backpacks and just the things that we carry on our shoulders. And for all, if majority, if not all humans that have arrived in the country where we live in, immigration wounds, different legacy burdens from survival and things inherited, passed down, um, developmental psychopathology. And, you think about um, heritability and the psychological aspects of that. And so, for my lineage, it's, coming from Europe in many different ways. And specifically, there's been inherited amount of shame, and there was no time to talk about emotions, period, for so many different cultures and um, different areas of life where people come from, because you're busy trying to survive and find your next meal. You landed in a new country. This is the age that you're at, and this is such a, what I'm saying right now means so many different things right now in this day and age of this day right now, February 4th, 2025 as well. So just kind of carrying the weight of that as, for so many people. Um,
Mhm.
but then just thinking about that, how somehow I've had the certain amount of resourcing and aware of the privilege that comes with it. And so, what can I do with this? And so, if it's something I can just do better with as a human being and provide healing light to whoever I can, but not only to other people, my clients, but also, my family of origin too. So, if I can do the work that my ancestors were not able to do because of all of the survival, that's my mission. That's my
Hmm.
mission. And that's what I get to do for the humans ahead of me, my children, and who comes next, and the people that brought me here.
Right. That visual really resonates of the invisible backpack, because so many of us are carrying it, and the idea that you can be carrying it and just putting more into it, or you can turn
Yeah.
around and take it off and start pulling things out. And
Mm-hmm.
um, hmm, that's hard. It's hard. Hard isn't even the right word. It's nuanced work to even know how to take a backpack off and start taking things out. So let's go
Mm-hmm.
back to your younger story for a little bit. And how did things progress as you were an adolescent? How did, you know, even though you didn't know like exactly what was different about you per se, and the times were very different then, what was going on for you in adolescence?
Yeah, I always felt I was different. I always, really perceived from first grade forward, um, the way I processed the world just felt different and not as they were instructing it to children in a typical way, kind of thing. So it just studying and absorbing information was always harder for me. It always took so much time. Um, and of course, the report cards we hear, and like we've probably even see like memes of little girls who come to find out are also neurospicy, right? Talk so much in class, was very bossy at recess, but really helped all the kids that were injured at recess, brought them all to the nurse like a mother hen. So it's like all these typical things we hear, but those were my report cards. Oh, was sitting in a desk and peeling glue off her hands because that's when we really needed a fidget spinner, right?
Yeah.
Nowadays. Yeah,
Hmm.
nowadays. So it's so amazing to think about that and what that really meant and all those signs. Now I can say that, but it comes with knowing a lot of the sadness and confusion I carried in my heart as a little one, like feeling different, feeling I comprehended things differently. It was harder for me. Just so hard. Um, so I zoom back into the now and just really notice a child that really could have used some testing and an accommodations plan
Hmm.
to feel better, to feel less anxious, to feel like, you know, her scores were measured appropriately with the conditions of the environment that provided the optimal testing for this child. So zooming into me and zooming out to what that could mean for so many children at the same time. And so, yeah, so, and I also, to cope with my movement, I was put into dance classes at an earlier age. So I was just this little spinning, whirling, pirouetting little girl who loved to dance a lot. And it was really very important to me. And I've come to learn that that was just became a really huge coping strategy for me and my nervous system and all my energy. Um, and it was something in my day each day that I actually looked forward to. And everything else otherwise was very stressful and terrifying. It was terrifying to walk into certain classes and my language classes, right? Like, the Spanish and the French and all the things you learn, and it's hard. Um, and then come to find out when you're dyslexic, it's really hard to learn a different language
Hmm.
because of what dyslexia is. Being able to do so much work now and having so much compassion for this little girl, me, and then stepping back into that emotionally and accessing that and just feeling just like really feeling again the nervous system kind of spike up, like how confusing it was, feeling so different. Um, and now coping and understanding. For me, this is how I identify just, being a neurodivergent in a world built to be a neurotypical environment. So very challenging.
What do you wish you could have? What do you wish could have been said to little Emily? Or if you could go back, which I get a sense you are going back and
Mm-hmm.
re-entering that moment that those emotions and feelings were created. So then what do you say to little Emily? What do you
Mm.
wish was said to her by her environment, or what do you do now within yourself?
What I do within myself and in my personal work is I um, remind myself me and her have a connection now. And she likes to hang out with me. Like, you picture it in your mind's eye when you're doing this work, specifically IFS, internal family systems. But, I picture in my mind's eye and that emotional part of me when I think about that grief and the sadness and confusion, it wants to be around the me now because it wishes that I had like a bigger sister because I was like, I'm the oldest with two younger siblings. So it was a lot to figure out in that specific world. So she wants to be around. She like loves that I'm a mom now. She thinks that's so cool. Um, but she really wants to not be alone anymore. So I have to work with that part of me to remind her, because she always forgets. Still nowadays, this part forgets that she has me. So there's times when my certain emotional states will take me out a little bit. And I know how to luckily regulate through that to give myself some space to process. But she still forgets that she has me now, which I understand too, because she felt emotionally alone for her whole life. So
Mm.
just really intentionally reforging that connection that has been worked on so much and made, but still doing 10 years of therapy, plus, it still needs to happen like that.
So now that you're able to reconnect with little Emily and tell her those things, so I'm hearing too that what you could have wished from the environment then was to just have not felt alone,
Mm-hmm.
to have felt
Mm-hmm.
people turn towards you and
Mm-hmm.
understanding and celebration of your uniqueness and who you were, rather than forcing you to
Yeah.
find a way to meet everyone else.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. And that part, always felt alone and then got used to doing things alone and figuring out things alone, and felt alone. Even maybe if someone was trying to do whatever they could do on their end of trying to be supportive, it still was in a very isolating, experience. Um, Always. And then the inner critic would say, there's something wrong with you. Why aren't you doing it right? You can never do it right. So I know. But then it's just amazing and sad how I can access those inner critic voices actually right now easily, because I was just kind of reconnecting with that little one. And once I was like reconnecting, she was kind of showing me, these are the voices we always have heard. I'm like, oh gosh, they just came out of my mouth right there. But that's
Mm.
what they've always said. Um, and so it's just, yeah, there's a lot of different intersections of factors that cause this kind of development of all these things. But really, the lived experience of not having the nervous system honored and accommodated to in a way where it was optimal for learning and emotional processing. So it's
Mm.
just something that, I want to pass on to my children, to anyone's children, to parents themselves, as like a way we can find understanding in this and healing.
I love that word, honored. If we can allow
Mhm.
the systems that our children naturally born with to be honored. Do you think that anybody's normal, or is normal like this weird thing that was created that nobody actually feels like they totally fit into? Have you met anyone that
Oh my
does?
gosh. Thank you for asking this question. And I think no one knows what that means anymore. Like, it's just being human,
Yeah.
just being human. And unfortunately, I think the just like in certain environments, educational environments, measurement focused environments have caused certain baselines to be called baselines and something else to be quote unquote norms. And, yes, there are certain areas where it's important really to understand. And it is overall, there's a good side to understanding, how we can learn to support things when things are just not optimal and are extra challenging. That's also a part of the story too.
Hmm.
But we don't know what is quote unquote typical or normal. It's just, how can we learn who this person is and have them show us who they are? Not we telling them who they are as
Gosh,
well.
if we could just, that's the reverse of the energy, rather than the
Mhm.
trying to put things in to a person, letting something come out.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yep. Yep. I think
That's
that's,
a huge systematic shift
yeah.
away from ratings and test
Hmm.
scores, and that a lot of that to me feels like just fear on top of fear to try and keep up with
Hmm.
everything for even the systems. And I'm not,
Hmm.
and I, my children are a part of them and love the teachers and think that
Yeah.
experience is overall really wonderful, but also acknowledging the design in such a way for
Yeah.
certain
So
things.
no matter what any child is facing, or what words we can describe to understand their nervous system, I think it's important to carry a healthy amount of important skepticism so we can facilitate their development as well as we can in the way that they need that. So it's attuned for them.
Mm-hmm. So, Emily, how are you able to do this kind of care and thought for your children, for those that you work with, while you're also doing it for yourself? That's like a tall task, yes? Because we can
You
be,
know,
like you said, sometimes hijacked and offline within our own selves. So just like,
yeah.
tell me how you do
So
it.
I will find some kind of answer. Ready? It's in here.
Yeah.
I think it has taken me a very long time to learn about my nervous system and learn about what parts of me have been initially preventing what we want here with growth and healing and facilitating understanding across the board. So I had to learn to overcome the parts of me that would overschedule and overbook myself. Because that part, just like, she's a white knuckler. This part is like, Emily doesn't need to sleep. You'll sleep when you're dead. It's a just keep booking your, no, sorry. Love you. So, there's different parts of us that we have to learn and discern. And this part always went well because she really helped me so much with developing, my practice and different parts of work for me. Um, and I'm in a space with grateful to have some resourcing available to me where I can teach this part of me to give me some space because it's okay because I'm here and I'll listen to it if it comes up and it feels like an emergency. And then, your schedules is like, hold on. We can do things differently now. Because, for working moms as well, we have to find a way to have some attainable amount of spaciousness in the calendar.
So beyond true. And
Yeah. To have some breathing room to process, to do our work, emotional work, um, because we need the clarity that drop in of what we need to feel attuned to ourselves and our own families and the people we care about. And if we have the space to do that and lean in, then we have some clarity, space, clarity, and some patience with whoever else we could be encountering. So we get the chance to have our best self come forward.
mm. So how do you actually do that? Like how do you actually create space and create a little buffer with that one inside that's like, yes,
Mhm.
all you need is 5 minutes. Maybe we can even cancel that.
No. So I'm just going to give a sidebar but connected part of my story with hopes
Please
that
do.
whoever you are out there that gets to hang out with us and listen or watch this, you can see what that is for you because I don't know that answer for somebody else.
Mhm.
But unfortunately for me, it took me hitting major subsequent moments of burnout and struggle and, motherhood burnout and the inner critic just wreaking havoc. And it's like the parts were working so hard for me in overdrive that I couldn't see in front of me what was actually needed to happen for health and benefit for my own system and my family.
And
Um,
really quick, just hold the
yeah.
thought and the parts when you say that, you're meaning like the different voices and aspects within yourself.
Absolutely, yes.
Mhm.
Like the different parts of us, parts that are saying like this part of the story, and then no, but like what about this part? There's different narratives that we have, right? And
Mhm.
that sometimes, most of the time, these narratives create some cognitive dissonance. We don't know what to do. We don't know what's this, and we feel really there's a lot going on. What's the
Yeah.
answer? It's confusing. So that's such a general way to put it, but if anyone can, resonate with that, that's kind of what I'm saying with these different parts of us. There's parts
Yes.
that are frustrated, parts that are overwhelmed, and then parts that have like this choreography that if we get overwhelmed, this is the thing we usually do. This is how we do it. And we're going to steamroll, we're going to manage the situation 10 times over. That's like a manager part, right? And then there's different parts that are firefighter parts, in which we describe them as like maybe dissociative or parts that are so overwhelmed that they have rage and anger. And so they try to put a fire out of overwhelm. So there's like a different energies to these parts of us that mean to protect us and help us because before they previously have. And they worked before when the before was happening. And then now these parts meaning well, but they don't help anymore to what's going on in the moment. And that's when we see a lot of things around us burnout, overwhelm, rock bottom, over and over. And these parts are like, wait, we do this thing where we're trying to fix it and it's just not happening. And so that's where I've gotten to so many times, and the hard way. One of my inner critics will say, Emily usually does things the hard way. And just like, maybe that's just how it goes. But I have like deductive reasoning because of my dyslexia. And so just like, that's just how my brain processes things. But the more I was able to have the resources to understand myself and my brain and learn how to slow down, because when you're neurospicy, you just like, you feel it out because you have strong intuition and you got powerful energy. But really,
Mm.
what does slowing down mean? And then that's when clarity can drop in. That's
Yes.
when you figure out what to do with yourself, when it's like a moment of paralysis initially because you don't know what to do. There's so much to do, but it's like, is there? I don't know. This can mean so much for so many different people. And I don't get to say what it is for each person, but if we can create a moment, a pause for anyone's self to be in there, what would those voices say to you? Because we try to overschedule ourselves so we don't feel things, right? We don't feel, because, feelings are tough. They're tough. We don't want to feel the hard stuff. But then if there's quiet and pause somehow, again, we know how hard it is to attain this as adults and working parents. What would the narratives in your mind say is my question. Maybe we don't want to know what they're going to say, but we need to find a way to listen to them, because then that's how we're going to get to everything we actually want to get to.
Mm-hmm. So this is your work.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone, this is, to just underscore very obviously, like this is the work you're doing for others, obviously within yourself. And this is what has helped heal or integrate your inner critic. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
The, the
Yep.
big voices that were so, and I loved, I don't know if this is the right word to say I loved, but when you described, as a younger person, adolescence and up and through college, thinking the voices of your inner critic were your personality and having
Yep.
that confusion. When you said that, I can so relate. I think so many of us do, where we
Yes.
get duped by these narratives and think, oh, that's just me.
Yes.
And then through this work with defining and understanding the narratives of your parts, you've realized that's not you with a
Mm-hmm.
capital Y.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I have
So,
like so much to say about that.
yeah, go ahead.
Like,
Say anything related to that.
it's beautiful to hear you reflect it back, because it just is going to help so many people understand that about themselves. Um, and with this approach, with learning about our parts of us, I always tell everyone, as therapists do, as helpers do, we're always trying to look for the best, most healing approaches, if there's a way to do that. And for me, I like to throw myself into the ringer, I call it, and just do all the trainings. That's a part of me. Like I have like a learner part that gets so excited.
Mm.
Just love it. Um, and so do all these challenging trainings. They're intense and everything else. And I'll come at the end of it and I'll be like, how is this going to land for people? And just really this approach, Dr. Richard Schwartz is the founder of Internal Family Systems. And just, I really admire his work with this. And it's been beautiful to see how this lands on people, and then people in their sessions with me recently, even like the past weeks, are like, this is like voodoo. Like, how does this work? And like, we all have nervous systems and different parts that chime in and came on and developed at certain points and just stay with us with the energy and the narratives they have. So this lands for every human, I want to say, and I feel confident saying that. And I think if we embrace learning about our different parts, we can see who's been in the driver's seat.
Ugh.
So that's what you're saying when you're reflecting it back. I had to have, definitely from adolescence to college, a striver in the driver's seat. And the striver was striving for so many things, striving to be heard, striving to be understood, striving to figure out things for so many different people, my loved ones, striving to figure out how to learn. And in college, that required to almost not sleep in a library, but everything else, go to class and like be in a library otherwise. So if that wasn't a learning difference, right? That's something is so clear and palpable to me now, and is so full of grief for anyone going through this process too, in so many different ways. Because it's had I have known that I had a learning disability, a learning difference, gosh, I wish I could have known how to support myself then. My striver was in the front driver's seat, because that part actually did really well for me then, because it helped me perform in a way where I wanted to and I thought I could. I wanted to prove to myself I wasn't stupid. And so that's something that that part wanted me to do, is just, it was the sacrifices that I had to make to see if this was true or not about myself. But it came at a cost of so many things, relationships, connections, things that are so important to being human. And so that's when these parts, the protector parts, become self-isolating too. So it's hard to trust people around me. It's hard to trust myself, how I could do and perform as a student and in different realms as well. But then once you look and see who's in the driver's seat, there's so much processing that happens. And so nowadays I'm trying to have this white knuckler striver part breathe, because when I'm able to be at a point in my life where I'm able to do that, and once that happens, so much clarity drops in, and then the parts relax a little bit, and then they learn how to trust me, because now they're really learning that there's been a self there the whole time.
Yeah, that's the next follow-up is who is me? Once you
Yeah,
realize who's driving and who's been in charge of different times and areas, like
yeah,
who are we really behind it all?
I know, right? And I can't wait for people to find out what that is for them. And it, as Dr. Richard Schwartz tells us, and this is true in so many different ways, it includes calm, confidence, courage, compassion, self compassion, and compassion. I think I said clarity already. I love that word. That's my word of the year. So I could be
Ooh, I
repeating
love that.
a few different times. Um, and so the mixture of those elements and values helps us know that, okay, that's a clue that our self is on board. Calm, compassionate, curious, clear. So if we're feeling those qualities, it's like, okay, that's a sign that the pure self, the core self, is on board in a moment. But if we're really not feeling those things, that's becomes, evident that someone else is in the driver's seat. So I think if we get curious about the parts of us, if we're able to, we kind of learn how to have an internal interaction and recategorization of how can I arrive as being my best self if I have the energy and resources to do that? And why not figure out, seeing how I can find healing in that?
To just even, yeah, those questions could just even take it down a notch, even if you can't get fully seated in the core self. Might just
Oh, yeah.
take an edge off of the louder voices that are in the driver's seat or right up front.
Yeah, because,
What
for a
does it
while,
feel like? Go ahead.
sorry, Catherine, I have a bit of a delay still, but I want to hear what you are going to say. So I wanted to mention though, because for me, it took me a long time to, well, it took my part that's a striver and the bit of the perfectionist qualities relinquish. Like, yes, I am a part. I'm not self. And that's what we call, self-like parts. And for those who have gone through many different things in life early on, like me, we create emotional parts of ourselves that are kind of like inner coaches, like inner motherings, inner cheerleaders. Like, okay, you got this. You do this next. You do this next, and then it kind of turns into like a perfectionist voice a little bit, and then it can, have big degrees of that. So that part of me had a hard time of demasking and being like, yes, this is not self. We thought this was self. So kind of wanted to speak to that too.
Well, I think that's important.
Yeah.
I can relate that I know that there's some very loud, upfront voices that are and will continue to be surprised that they're not the
Yeah.
whole thing.
Oh, I know. And
Yes.
honestly, if we feel into that a little bit, we want to engage with those parts with a lot of appreciation. So if it's us, you and I, or like anyone else, hanging out with us in this virtual space, listening, if there's a part that kind of felt like seen a little bit just now, it's like, hold on, let's give it some love. We want it to feel appreciated because it's trying to help,
God,
and then go
that's
from there.
underneath everything that you talk about is the fact that there's no part that's really male intended. Like
No.
even the harshest things inside
Mhm.
are there out of a reason that was meant to protect or do something for our good on some level, which is
Yes.
just like, huh. I mean,
Yes.
that's like a bigger thing to digest than I really, sitting here hosting this podcast can do right now. To realize that all of these things are not meaning anything but good. Like that's a big thing to swallow.
yeah, let's keep digesting it. We
Thank
can
you.
keep just like processing this. It's such a big realization.
It is. And there's so many, I don't know, just layer after layer, level after level of it. My question, you've done so much of this work, more than probably any of us listening, because this is the thing you're doing in the world. And also, you've had a chance to really sit in the self with a capital S. I love that you're always speaking from like your own experience, never implying what it feels for others. Very
Mhm.
wise, of course. So, but what does it feel like to Emily when you're sitting and you're operating from yourself? And how much now are you moving from that place?
I like to say and feel clear saying that I have more access to self nowadays, and I've created a way to work with my parts, and we call it in IFS community the therapist U-turn, but like U-turn for any person to try out. And it's just being really curious in all interactions, like kind of seeing and checking in who's in the driver's seat. And the more I've been able to do that, the more I can kind of like let my parts know or who needs to kind of be acknowledged. And it's like, okay, it's kind of like a, okay, yes, you feel you're thinking about this thing from earlier on, and then you'll take care of it later. It's okay. It's like talking to certain parts in a way where it's like, hey, we can trust Emily. She'll take care of it later on. So the more I've been able to do the U-turn in my work as a therapist, but also in my personal or my the rest of my life as a human, the more access to self I'm able to be in. And for me, it feels like really calm in my nervous system, um, less emergency mode. With the neurospices and the ADHDers like me, our bodies are wired to feel an emergency a lot of the time. Um, and so once my parts have learned that they can trust me, they know that luckily we're not in any danger. And so once they've trusted that, the self can be around and it feels really calm to my body, less overly vibrational in that way, but really clear on what I need to do, less apologizing about boundaries. Trust me to communicate boundaries for anything that anyone needs to do in a way that is trusting to myself that I will do that with love, lead with love and compassion, because myself always intends to lead forward, lead Emily, lead the self. This is how we do life, like with compassion. And knowing that, um, I've taught myself in my inner critic parts that I'm not doing anything wrong.
Yeah.
I
It's just kind of like,
know.
boom.
And I
So,
want that
so beautiful.
for others so bad. I want others to find a way towards, sturdiness, groundedness, which is like the self showing up and being assured of themselves and seeing where self can take. And I want that for people so bad.
Hmm. That's beautiful. And that's what you do. Let's speak to parents ever so briefly.
Yeah.
In this day and age, with the new awareness that we have, and the awareness that's now in schools too, thankfully, which feels different than the time when you and I were in kindergarten, and there was more pressure for everybody to like stay in the line, be this, stick
Mm-hmm.
to the standard kind of thing. What advice, recommendations, or nuggets would you leave parents with who are doing this work themselves or beginning to open this for themselves, but then want to make sure they're not messing it up worse for their
Mm.
kids?
A guarantee of checking off those boxes and taking care of those concerns is getting into therapy yourself. That's the best gift we can give our children. Um, is being open to receiving, open to identifying, open to learning, and knowing that we're always going to lead with love in our hearts. We love our little ones, and we can't do it alone. And I just want to speak to those parts that I know a lot of people have too. And even if you're partnered or, um, sometimes people can feel alone in their partnerships. And so I just want to speak to people in their nervous system if they have a part that is struggling with feeling alone, it's understandable. And um, hopefully therapy is accessible somehow to people. And that's just something I'm always have my eye on and concerned about. And parents deserve that. Parents deserve that. That's the number one thing we can do for our children. And from there, so much healing and intentional support that's attuned to the child will follow.
When we free up more space within
Mhm.
ourselves, the natural ability to do the right thing by them is there. I'm hearing
Yep,
you say that. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. And then
And
we can figure out how to work with our parts that maybe have certain feelings about voicing concerns or noticing things in our child. And what do I do next? And it's like therapy is a space to continue that, for oneself and then for the benefit of the system.
and give us a little insight into where you're presently at and how you guide your son, like who is neurospicy like you, but your son's plural. Like,
Yeah.
what do you lead with them?
Oh yeah. My oldest, he's all children are powerful and they have their own power, and they're trying to figure out what kind of power they have.
Hmm.
They love testing it because that's what they're supposed to do. And my oldest is me. I'm looking at myself when I look at him. And it's incredible because it can be triggering in so many ways, and even beautiful ways and sad ways when you see our kids struggle, and then sad ways because it reminds us of the hard stories from our own selves. Um, and every child has a light. They come into this world with a light of love and healing and vulnerability and potential. And I just always do my best, just like everyone is, and keeping in mind, how can I best support my child today? How can I help this child know that they're loved by me today? Um, how can we have this hard conversation and learn a lesson with love today? And so, following that, it's even if it's not hard moments where, the kids over here and, jumping off couches and counters and decided to go outside to do something very understandable, like getting all the newspapers that accidentally accumulated in the front. But then he forgot to tell me, and I didn't know he left the house. And or he decides to like shovel the whole driveway, but I didn't know where he was. And I didn't hear him leave. So it's just the well meaning that children have. And so I've been doing my best. And I think if all of us work together as parents and work with our parts that maybe feel triggered, this, it's what is this child intending? We know what we're intending. We're just like trying to help everyone survive, eat.
Yes, like don't die.
No, don't die on us. Wear clothes.
Yeah,
Don't, learn about what words are we should say and not say, just,
right.
other things, and how to interact within the social norms we want our children healthily to interact in. And then what does the child intend with their behavior? What are they meaning? And it all connects back to their nervous system has a need. And if I just want to lead with that, that's all I want to lead with. Because then the answers come to me and with my own child, you know? And we're signed up for therapy. We all need it. We can't therapize ourselves. Trust me. I have tried
You
before.
can't. Yeah, even when you know all the tricks.
Even if we know things and we do these things like the U-turn and we do meditations, we still need a human being logged in with us in person or virtually that is there in the role that they're in, if we're able to get that.
We're meant to be connected to each other, and we can't think that we can go on healing and unpacking our invisible backpacks
Mhm.
without a little extra hand once in a while, is what
Yeah,
I'm hearing.
right. Because when we are with our own selves, it's subjective always.
Hmm.
So we need that nervous system, the other human being, and their objective, compassionate support to walk us through things. And that's terrifying when we have some inner critics that are like, I don't want this person to think this about me. I don't want this person to think this is too much, vulnerable, everything else. Yeah. And I'll get you to where you want to get to if you find the right person. It's like dating, it'll get there. Got to find the good one.
Okay, really quick, any suggestions then on how to not have to take so long to find the right person?
I know it takes a long time sometimes. Um, I loved this is carrying in my heart moving forward ever since someone asked me this last year. Someone was calling in to sign themselves up for therapy, and they asked, "Are you in therapy?" I'm like, "Good for you for asking that. Hell yeah. Ask any question you want to ask to this person that you're signing up with to
Mm,
have them walk you through the fire, you know?" So I love that. Ask that person, "Are you in therapy too?" You want your therapist to be in therapy. We need that to happen because then the healing provided is really at a high quality degree.
yeah.
So I love that. I just honoring the need for people to ask that question. Um, it takes a while. And if it doesn't feel quite right, advocate for yourself, just as in any way that you need to, whether if it's openly mentioning it or just go moving forward and deciding different, scheduling your schedule differently. That's okay. This is about a client, a person needing healing and needing support, and you get to decide who you want in your arena when you're struggling and need healing and support, period.
Okay. So just continue to be discerning and it's okay to
Mhm.
make changes.
Mhm.
I'd like to close with a question on what could this world be in a generation? What would you see if each of us keeps leaning into taking off our invisible backpacks and unpacking a few pieces, if not more than a few, doing a little better with our children, if not a
Yeah,
lot.
there's a lot going on in this world and everything that's happened recently here in the States. So I think all of us need to keep an eye out for each other, big or small. Small is big in my book, right? So if it's just like someone needing a hand with something, holding a door open for somebody, you're on the airplane and you see a mom struggling or a parent struggling with a screaming, wailing baby, and there's a toddler next to them. You ask the mom, "Can I get, slip this kid a little coloring book?" It's the light. We need to find a way to have an eye out for each other somehow. And if we can do that, my hope is that the world in a generation feels better than it is now. And we can find and create some understanding in our children at an earlier age that they're purely beautiful and wonderful and full of potential and love and wonderful, just the way they are. Um, and just there's just so much nuance to all of this and what I'm saying. But I guess I know it begins with just having an eye out for each other and actually caring, and that's the way
And
forward.
realizing with what you're saying, what's coming up is just like realizing that we're all sitting here with all these voices trying to make better sense of getting in touch with our real self, like whether
Mhm.
consciously or not, but that all of
Yeah,
us are dealing with so much more than any of us realizes.
yeah, and we need true, genuine connection from human to human more than ever before. So
Hmm.
I kind of like do this with my eagle eye. If we keep an eye out for one another, if someone drops their little stuffed animal out of their backpack, this little it's just just being anything micro. And there's definitely more integrated and involved ways to affect change in systems. Any way that anyone's able to do that, we have to find a way. We're all just trying to survive and be on this earth. I mean, why not try together? That's my big
Hmm.
wish. And there's so much to that, but I'd love to see how people try it out.
The invitation to the micro connections. I love that. I love that. That's a door opener, literally, figuratively.
Yes.
Well, I want to close with some closing appreciations. And one is something that hit me when you were talking about yourself in the library and wanting to, the managers within you that were showing up in order for, in your words, to not feel stupid, I think is what you said. But
Hmm.
when you said that, I'm like, yeah, but I'm sitting here with you, this woman who's got like, you're an entrepreneur, you're a licensed therapist, you've done so many different things. You pretty much started your business while your children were infants. I'm like, whoa, like, yeah, there's nothing but epic brilliance going on over here. So I
Thank
don't know,
you.
I just have appreciation for your psyche and the way that you are because it's very you've created a lot of goodness, you're capable of a lot.
Thank you.
A lot is not even the right word, but it's just, wow, look at you,
Thank you. That
is what's going
touches
through
my
my head.
heart. That touches my heart. And to know that at all, that that's the truth is like the reason why I'm here on this earth. I know that. And to add a little bit of a smile to that and your kind statements, my white knuckler, my striver parts are the ones that love knowing that Emily did these things. And it's also the reason why Emily had a lot of burnout breakdown moments. And I'm so grateful to be in this role of my life to put connections together and create healthy spaces and entities for people to heal. And um, it's just an honor to be in this spot because it's something I don't take lightly. And I just want healing for any human. And I really appreciate your kind words. And we're going to see what the self can do when the self steps forward. And the striver can breathe a little bit. But the striver was busy, wasn't she? Just kidding.
This driver was very busy. It did some great stuff. And now, wow, if the self can,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, if the self can do something, I'm sure it's going to only be epic and graceful and centered and clear and a lot
Mm-hmm.
too.
Thank you. I'm so grateful for your
Yeah.
words in this conversation. This is, I love talking about IFS. We got to keep
Well,
digesting all this all together.
yeah, but you've also integrated it. And your vulnerable and open story is very healing for other people because that's how we can really figure out what we're doing within ourselves is when we get someone who's willing to like say, hey, check it out. This is what's going on in here. And this is how I've worked differently with it. So that's just enlightening.
Mm.
Thank you once again for sharing your story. And everyone be on the lookout. Skinny Platform will be sharing when Emily's book comes out, and you'll get to hear the full story, which is really epic and
Mm.
a beautiful tale to ride along with. So thank you again for your time, Emily.
Thank you, Catherine. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Expanders Podcast, presented by the Skinny Platform. You can catch more episodes and be notified of newly released episodes by following us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or subscribing on YouTube. For more information on the Expanders Podcast and the Skinny Platform, visit our website, www.theskinnyplatform.com.